Looking at the other league, because I also want to talk about matchups, and we're going to do that because Tigers Astros is a fun one I want to sink my teeth back into. But let's look at the National League right now. Again, it's 4 teams, 3 spots. You have the Mets currently back in the picture, the Braves on the outside looking in, 2 games back. Diamondbacks and the Mets are tied, and then the Padres are the head wild card at 2.5 games up of the Diamondbacks and the Mets. Can we just say the Padres are going to be a playoff team? I feel like that's the one that I'm not too concerned about. I feel like they're going to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and even though, look, they have the Dodgers coming up, but you know what? They play the White Sox this weekend. So if they get that sweep, then they go and they got to face the Dodgers series, or excuse me, the division could be in play still. So that could be a really fun series next week. And then close it out against the Diamondbacks. But I just think that this Padres team is too good. And honestly, maybe next week when we're talking about who are the best World Series threats, I think San Diego has everything you need to make a run this year.
And as you just pointed out, the teams that they are playing before the postseason, I think gets them in a pre-postseason phase. Like they're sitting in a great spot where even if things don't go well for them to finish out the regular season, that's okay. They can learn things from that, but they have an opportunity for things to go really well with the division on the line in really important games against the Dodgers, and then 3 against the Diamondbacks, who, again, mathematically speaking, by where things are at right now in the wild card standings, Diamondbacks are going to be going for that series. So this will be a perfect kind of setup, I feel like, for the Padres to either learn from their mistakes or continue to build some kind of momentum to maybe make a run to their first World Series since 1998.
Yeah, it's a team that has the star players in the lineup. You have Luis Ariz, who hasn't struck out in who knows how long. You have Manny Machado getting hot at the right time, Fernando Tatis Jr. Your rotation, all of a sudden, you got Darvish and Musgrove back. You have this super bullpen you've built. It's a team that checks all the boxes, and right now they're 3.5 games back of the Dodgers. And again, they're playing the White Sox this weekend, so they could go into that series and say, "Oh, we sweep LA, we're right here." So I think the Padres, they just beat the Astros in a tough series. I think they're built to survive what is probably the toughest schedule of the group, which leads me to the team that they're going to finish the season against. Are the Diamondbacks going to fall out of this thing? Because they were the hottest team in baseball for some time. They've had a couple tough series. You saw one of them firsthand, so I think you can give us some nice intel on this. What did you see with the Diamondbacks rolling into Colorado and getting beaten in this series, losing the first 2 games?
Before they built a lot of momentum on the way out with a 9-4 victory on Wednesday over the Rockies, yeah, they didn't look great. They got beaten. They had opportunities to win in the first 2 games, but they got beaten. In fact, Monday's loss 3-2. They lost on the base paths, which is surprising for the Diamondbacks club. Rookie catcher Hunter Goodman got his first career caught stealing. He was 0 for 12, and then his 13th opportunity, he nabs Corbin Carroll at second base. And then you have got Gold Glove Award winner Gabby Moreno not able to throw out Brenton Doyle, stealing second base on the first pitch, which helped create the game-winning run, the walk-off run for the Rockies there on Monday. So they struggled. They're on the struggle bus, and their biggest issue has really just been the pitching more so than the offense. And they were able to get 3 home runs on Wednesday, 2 from Corbin Carroll, who all of a sudden looks like a world beater once again after a slow start. So that's positive for them. But the pitching is where they struggled. And Merrill Kelly, 7 innings of 1-run ball on Monday. Jordan Montgomery didn't look good in his first start back in the rotation since August 21st. And then you had Eduardo Rodriguez in his best start since coming over to Arizona. So I think that's positive. I think that's building some momentum. The bullpen was, okay, other than Tuesday night. So I think that's positive for them. The closer spot is their biggest issue with not having Paul Sewald there. Justin Martinez seems like he's going to be getting the ball, and maybe not AJ Puck, who probably could be a closer for most playoff teams. He's been absolutely fantastic since coming over from the Marlins, and even before then. But I think there's more important outs for him to get maybe in the 7th and 8th, if there's some left-handed bats. So there's that potential there. I'm not out on them, despite them not looking great in 2 games against one of the worst teams in the National League, who has sneakily been 15-16 since August 16th. So they've been playing a lot better, may even avoid 100 losses. That being said, I'm still all in on the Diamondbacks, who just have such a deep squad where you've got Josh Bell not even getting any playing time. Say what you will about his season. Obviously, he was just totally let go by the Marlins, but that's a potent bat coming off the bench that could really do damage. Randall Grichuk getting, playing time once in a while. And then one of the top prospects in the game in Jordan Lawler, who was hurt all year, he's a guy that can come off the bench for you in the postseason. So they've got a lot of depth, starting pitching, offensively. And I think that, they're going to end up being okay. And I think they're going to want to get themselves right before San Diego, just in case, so that it doesn't all boil down to that.
I think that with the Diamondbacks, I've been saying it, like they're a team that can make a really deep run, but they're hitting that skid that a team that was hot for 3 months eventually is going to find at the worst time, and the schedule is just not kind to them. You're right. The Rockies are a team. The Mets faced them a couple times in the second half, and they're a little bit frisky. They got some players. Like the Rockies are a team that is definitely working their way through a rebuild where I think the future isn't too far away when you have some guys like they do in the lineup, like Ezekiel Tovar, Ryan McMahon, and others. So you have a division rival. It's always tougher. Those are the toughest spoilers. The Rockies are going to get up more to spoil the Diamondback season than to spoil the Mets season, so to speak. The fact that they have 4 more in Milwaukee this weekend after just nearly getting swept by the Brewers last weekend, that's what makes me concerned. If they can split this 4-game set, I think they'll be in a good spot. Then they have to handle business at home against the Giants. And then who knows, maybe the Padres won enough games where that series doesn't matter to them and they're more focused on setting up their pitching. And you might not get a Padres team that's completely motivated to bounce you in that final series. But the schedule for me on Arizona is the only thing that concerns me more than if they are a playoff caliber team.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the Milwaukee series, even if you're able to only win 1 there, you can get yourself right against the Giants before an off day on Thursday, before going against San Diego there at home. So that is helpful for them. So not an ideal route, but it certainly could be a lot worse than a certain other team who has the most difficult strength of schedule remaining of their 9 or so games before the season ends.
Who are we talking about? The Mets?
The LFGMs, baby. Yeah, the New York Mets have the hardest strength of schedule of any team, facing nothing but winning clubs, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Atlanta. And that's just really, really difficult for them to have to deal with. And those final games against Milwaukee and Atlanta, they're on the road. That's the biggest challenge. So this 4-game set against the Phillies is going to be really telling. I know Brandon Nimmo is out there telling the entire world that's listening, hey, come on out to the ballpark. Let's pack out Citi Field. Let's see if we can take 3 out of 4 from the Phillies, who are still trying to make sure that they can secure the top spot in the National League so that they can get a wild card round bye. But yeah, it's on the line. It's on the line this weekend in the series with the Phillies. But look, is it impossible? Absolutely not. Are the odds stacked against them? Sure. But look, this is why we play the games. Last week we weren't even talking about the Detroit Tigers or anyone, but we weren't talking about the Detroit Tigers at all last week. And look where they're at. So, the future is in the fate. Their destiny is in the Mets' hands if they win out, right? I think if they do that, they'll definitely have one of the 3 wild card spots. How are you feeling about this weekend series? I don't know how far ahead you're looking with next week, all on the road, in Atlanta, in Milwaukee, but the Phillies series for you, what has to happen for you to feel a little bit more confident about the Mets holding on to the 3rd, if not better, wild card?
I feel pretty good about where the Mets are at. One of the interesting things is the Phillies enter this series with a magic number at 4, and the Mets being the second place team. If the Phillies win 2 games, they're going to have a champagne shower at Citi Field. I think that adds such an awesome layer to this. Also, to add a little more sauce to the series, let's just say the Mets take 2 of the first 3. Sunday Night Baseball, Zach Wheeler versus the New York Mets with a chance to clinch the first division title for the Phillies since 2011. So I know ESPN is hoping for that. I am too. I think that would be a lot of fun, but I feel good about this series for the Mets because they just went into Philly and they had a chance to sweep that series. They blew out the first game and they were right there. They blew a couple late leads in the final 2 games. And it was one of those series where you tip your cap and say, all right, the better team won. And they got contributions from like 3 guys you never would have heard of. Cal Stevenson and 2 other dudes I couldn't even tell you who their names are. And Cal Stevenson, he hit a double on a 3-2 cutter, like a great pitch. And it was just like one of those moments you're like, yeah, that's the team that's going to win the division. Then he robbed a home run the next half inning. Cal Stevenson. Do you know who Cal Stevenson is? Because I did not until last Saturday.
4th round pick out of the universe. No, I've never heard of him. No.
Exactly. So 27-year-old 4A guy that just had a moment. Look, the Mets were in all these games. The Mets have had the best rotation in baseball in September. And I feel really good about the guys that are going to run out there in this series. I think every time Sean Manaea takes the ball, the Mets have a great chance to win. David Peterson's been great lately. There was an amazing pitching matchup between him and Christopher Sanchez last Sunday. We're getting another version of it. So as a fan, I'm just excited to watch these games. Like, if it doesn't break the Mets' way, it's going to suck. But I feel like they can win at least 2, and then you're going to be in position against the Braves where that's going to be the series. Like, I really think Mets versus Braves in Atlanta is going to decide potentially who's the wild card team, and who doesn't want that? That's going to be a lot of fun too.
The Mets always break the hearts of Mets fans.
Don't
1986.
come on, don't say that. Why
Well,
are
it
you
always
saying
happens.
that to me? Why are you saying that to me? If the only argument why the Mets aren't going to make it is because they never do, or because they're always like, come on, what?
I'm not saying that they're not going to make the postseason. My preface is they just always break your hearts, right?
I know this.
But this season, this season is still a bonus, right? So my cousin, aka cousin Jordan, as he's known, we're talking about it, and every year at a certain point, and last year it came pretty early. I know in 2022, I think when they got bounced in the playoffs, it was like, you know what? This team, I can't anymore. I think I'm going to learn how to play piano. Like, I need to devote my life and my attention to something else. And so we're like, is it piano season yet? And it hasn't been, let's do something else with my life season yet for the Mets all year long. Like, they had that rough start. And then just like Al Pacino in The Godfather 3, they pull me back in. And that's what the Mets do. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing to have your heart broken, because it means you're giving your heart to something. Whereas if you don't have a team, if you don't have a dog in the race, or you're just not committed, partially because let's say you follow a team that is perennially bad and makes these frustrating decisions and is at the bottom of their division every single year, then you might not be giving as much of your heart away. Or that, hey, this is a good relationship. It isn't great. I'm not fully invested. So when it goes south, it's whatever. But when Mets fans who love like they love, that is a different passion. That's why they are one of the most passionate, if not the most passionate fan bases out there. When it falls flat, it falls hard. And so it's going to be a heartbreak. If you don't win the World Series, it will be a heartbreaking season. And this year is just lining up that way. Just odds are, whether you get in the playoffs, whether you win a couple rounds, whether you go to the World Series, it's going to be heartbreaking. But I think the 2024 campaign is going to be viewed incredibly fondly, because it was a year that no one was expecting it. In fact, it seemed like it wasn't even supposed to happen. It wasn't like, hey, you know what? Maybe if we all play really well. It was almost like, you know what? It's fine. This is going great. They're going to have a good draft pick next year. They'll save some money. They'll retool. And they said, you know what? No, we're not going to allow this to go down this way. We're going to go out and win, and we're going to figure some things out. And they've been able to do that. And so I think it's a beautiful thing to get your heart broken in that way. Well, it remains to be seen. But right now, this has been, I think, a good relationship. This is good for the heart for Mets fans everywhere. And I think the Mets are, I don't know, I do have the Mets on the outside looking in. But 2 games is a lot over Atlanta. That's the one.
It's a long-winded way of basically I've had my girlfriend's cheated on me a million times, and I'm telling you, like, Patrick, this time I promise, she's changed, and you're like, I think she's gonna cheat on you again and break your heart one more time, but we'll see. The thing about it, when it comes to the expectations, the difference between this year and 2022, the Mets were so great and they were a 100-win team that you knew they were going to make the playoffs. And so that set them up for a weird World Series or a bust type mindset, where this year it was so unexpected because they were dead in the water in May that if they make the playoffs, everything's gravy to me. If the Mets make the playoffs and they lose the wild card round, I'll feel great about this team moving forward. Even if they don't make it, I'm going to feel great about the fact that they have Lindor in place. They have a president of baseball operations in David Stearns that has showed that he knows how to build a winning team because he just did it from nothing this year, and a better farm system in place to be better moving forward. So I think the franchise is in good hands. But yeah, this has really set Mets fans up, because not only is it a situation where you're right there and you're starting to hope, it's Phillies, Braves. Like your two rivals are right in line here. Either one of them could put the death nail in the Mets season. If the Phillies just roll the Mets this weekend, then we're going to go into that series, Mets versus Braves, where the Braves might be ahead. The Braves are playing the Marlins this weekend. So we're going to have a real understanding when we get to Tuesday of where these teams sit. My only hope as a Mets fan is that it's at least even going into that series. And then, let the cards fall where they may. I think the Mets can beat the Braves in a series, even on the road.
Yeah, that will be exciting regardless. Even if this weekend doesn't go well, the Mets will have a chance to at least chip away at Atlanta. And the 2-game lead that they have over them right now, I think is a lot. And it's hard to bet against Atlanta and hard to bet on the Mets for all the reasons that we've just discussed. But it's looking good for the Mets. Again, if you can kind of put aside the fact that they've got some a tough road ahead of them and the teams that they play, that it bodes well for them. So I hope, for your sake, this isn't a Houston Astros situation. And when I say I think Atlanta gets in and the Mets get out, I hope I'm not right in the same way I was right about the Astros. But that's just how I feel, because it's just such a difficult road for them to possibly get in. And we know the guys on Atlanta and how they've been able to do it. Yes, they've been without so many of them, but they got Chris Sale now. And it's just a winning culture that they are used to. And so getting this close, only 2 games out, it's like you should have put them out of their misery when you had the chance. And the fact that they are still laying right there, it's almost a better position to be in, of like sitting back rather than looking over your shoulder at Atlanta. And that's where the Mets are at. And the Mets, to use another analogy, if you want to talk about girlfriends cheating on you, the Mets are like Rachel Lee Cook and She's All That, where you're like, I'm not going to get invited to prom. I'm not even going to go to the dance. And then all of a sudden, you take the glasses off, the hair goes down, you start wearing new clothes, Grimace, you're hanging out with Grimace, and you're like, okay, Mets, you're pretty cool. And maybe you do get invited to prom, and maybe you are going to be prom queen, and hopefully it's not a big prank and someone dumps pig's blood on your head. Now, obviously I'm talking about a different movie altogether in Stephen King's Carrie, but the prom analogy still applies here. I don't want to see Mets fans get their heart broken, because they're good people. They're crazy, but they're also good people.
Yes, we are crazy. We're good people. And Yuki believes we have some extra help. So maybe there's an angel in the infield. You know what? At first I would say you're crazy, Yuki. But then I watched Luis Angel Acuna hit 2 home runs in back-to-back games, filling in for Francisco Lindor. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Jose Iglesias, the way he's been playing this year, it's kind of insane what the Mets have gotten from some of these guys.